welcome to this Sovereign Cloud session. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm Director of Product Marketing for our Cloud Service Providers at Broadcom. And today we've got a few people on the call. So we'll go around the house first with a round of introductions. Martin, why don't you go first from Broadcom?
Thank you, Guy. Yeah, I'm Martin Hoskin. I'm the Field CTO for Cloud Providers Worldwide here at Broadcom.
Thanks, Martin. Enrico?
Thanks, Guy. I'm Enrico Fossati. I'm Chief Revenue Officer for Dynamo.
Thanks, Enrico. Marco?
Hi, everyone. I'm Marco Pernic. I'm a CTO of Dynamo.
Thanks, and we saved the best for last. Francesco?
Thanks, Guy. Thanks, Martin. This is Francesco Bonfiglio. I'm the CEO of Dynamo and former CEO of GaiaRx, as many might remember me.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, welcome, guys. Thanks for coming to the session. So today we're going to talk about Dynamo and what it is. So this came across my radar a couple of weeks ago. Looked like a really interesting proposition for our sovereign cloud providers in EMEA and particularly in Europe. And really, what it kind of proposes is unique and something that I believe, and I know you guys do, that the EU is really needing and currently lacking. So I'm going to dive straight into it with you guys.
GaiaX was successful to some extent in addressing part of the problem or making everybody aware of the need to think in a more federated way. But I also believe that the concept of federation passed through quite well when it was about, sharing data across multiple actors. So building this concept of a common data space, because it's pretty easy as far as you find a standard. So everybody agrees on, you find a common way to share safely, securely your data, but you don't have to share your core and business capital and capital intensive core assets. When it gets to creating a federation of cloud service providers, which means sharing the resources, sharing the portfolio, potentially sharing, your offering across a shared customers ecosystem, things are more difficult. And I think, to give you a short answer, that this is where Europe failed. And I also believe this is the only way for Europe to succeed, because there is no alternative way to build anything like what the big technology companies have built in terms of capacity, capitals, and spread of offering and territories. But in a federative model, we can address two problems at once. One is the fragmentation of Europe, which we cannot change. We are fragmented. We are made of small, medium business. And by the way, this is not just Europe. And two, we can address the new need of data, which is naturally distributed, decentralized, and everywhere. And a centralized cloud architecture cannot make it. And I think VMware and Broadcom now know very well the reason I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy we find ourselves in Europe. We're very reliant on hyperscale clouds. We haven't seen the cloud adoption. There's still a lot of on-prem. I think Europe missed their targets for wanting to get enterprises into cloud. And American hyperscalers and foreign hyperscalers are kind of ruling that market. And we're way too behind to even start thinking about building something like they've got. So this is a unique solution, which, as you said, allows us to look at federating our capabilities and providing a true service catalog that aligns to the key requirements around data sovereignty, control and compliance, and making sure that we're classifying data and exposing data and exchanging data that we can, and not data that we shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. So what I wanted to talk about using these visuals, because I want to leave some footprint in the mind of people listening to us today. So why I said this is the European cloud alternative, because we don't have any European cloud alternative. And let me explain what I mean by that. The need is very clear, as well as the context, but it wasn't like that just a few years ago. And when I was preaching that back in 2020 and 21, 22 and 23. Now everybody understands data economy as an emergency. We do have a problem of fragmentation, and the lack of capability of any individual provider cannot be fulfilled with the capacity, with the capability of any individual player, both in terms of capital, in terms of resources. The market, on the right side, the market needs trustworthy and controllable solutions and platform, and needs to reduce dependency, because the problem is not, let me say, the dominance of American platforms. The problem is still the low level of adoption of cloud. The recent Eurostat data say that European industry altogether have an average of cloud adoption of 45%, which means less than a half. And of course, this is distributed from the Nordics to the south of Europe in a different way. But the worst news is that 80% of those cloud services, and this 45%, are of three types: email, file sharing, and collaboration. In a nutshell, this is what Office 365 does. So none of the companies are still leveraging on the untapped data that you need in order to create real value in the business, improve business processes, build new products, or enrich existing products through data. So the only way is to leverage on this fragmentation, leverage on this weakness, if you want, to build a strength. Now, Europe did well, like I said before, in creating at the least the awareness of what a common data space is. And of course, the common data space, the way I used to explain it, is the digitalization or digital twin of value chains. Of course, if we live in a digital world, we need to exchange data across the axis of a value chain. But if we don't have common cloud spaces, common data spaces will simply have no place to run, or they will run on the yet same few platforms that are not European. It's like building cars and not having the motorways to run them. Our automotive economy will die, and I'm not making a parallel to what is happening to the automotive economy of Europe. But you understand that we do need a computing continuum. We do need a concept of federation that is far from being implemented. At the same time, the market is growing very fast, but the market share of European providers is declining very fast. So we lost 75% in just 7 years, from 26 to 10% as we speak, of the market share, with a cumulative market share of all European cloud service providers put together. That means we have a window of 3 years, 3 to 5 years before the market share becomes zero. What happens at that time? They will become resellers of non-European solutions. But on the positive side, the market is growing and is going to be extremely substantial in 2030. We're talking about almost 400 billions of addressable market. So we have the opportunity. We have also a business momentum that allow us to build something new, but it must be federative, because no one individual can make it, and no one is doing yet. Everybody looks at the hyperscalers like they are big. Yes, true, but they also have weaknesses. In particular, they are less controllable. They do not have client proximity. They are centralized, and that they use proprietary standards. And of course, they are not jurisdictionally immune. At the same time, when they look at the European CSPs, they say they are weak, which is true. But also they have strengths. They are controllable. They are close to customers. They know them since decades. They speak their language. They live in their territories. They are distributed. They are jurisdictionally immune, and they are open to collaborate. And they usually adopt open standards. So interestingly enough, the weaknesses of the ones are the strengths of the others. And if you look at the European projects, the IRX, which I used to lead, or the IPSI, the Euro HPC, or the Digital Europe program, they have a great merit to have increased the awareness of the problem, and also they are addressing open standards, blueprints, and let me say, they advocate, but they are not acting concretely in the market. So if we have a problem in the market, we cannot act outside of the market. This is a snapshot of some of the projects that are running nowadays in Europe. Some of you may know them, some of you may have heard about them, but one thing is important to know. They cannot build commercial services in the market. They cannot build legal entities in the market. They are not building cloud services in the market. They are not addressing the fragmentation that the market is suffering. And what Dynamo wants to do is to do all these things, leveraging on the open standards and on everything that's built from the public funded projects, but acting very concretely and pragmatically in the market, restricted to the European providers and making them protected and stronger. So what we do, in a nutshell, is a concept of a virtual cloud service provider. What that means is a kind of, imagine you want to build a big, gigantic European cloud champion. What would you do? You buy all the companies around Europe. First, you have to have capitals. Second, you have to find people that want to be acquired, which is not easy. Third, if you're lucky, you go through 3 to 5 years of painful merger and acquisition with huge reorganization, painful harmonization of catalog processes, cloud management platforms. You lose typically 20% of the best people and as well 20% of the best customers. And maybe in 3 years' time, you will be break even. In other words, you will be at the same level you wanted to be when you thought you wanted to become big. Now, what I asked myself, what if we do the same in a cheap, fast, immediate way? In other words, why don't we build a platform that provides all the mechanisms to make the collaboration across multiple independent, autonomous, competitive cloud service providers collaborate one another like they were part of the same company, but only virtually. So Dynamo is a true marketplace. It's a true commercial federation, is restricted to European providers only, and wants to create the equivalent of a virtual merger to build a critical mass that anyone needs, regardless they are the bigger or the smaller ones. We are a B2B intermediary. In other words, we are not competing with our participants because we do not sell to their customers. The customer relation is retained by our participants, and Dynamo is totally transparent to the end customer. So every individual participant, as small, as big as it can be, they continue to be themselves. They continue to sell their own stuff. But when they do not have enough offering to fulfill the market or their customers' demand, they have an option to extend their portfolio, reselling solutions provided by one of their partners. What happens is that Dynamo becomes a huge reselling or indirect channel of sales that Europe is missing. This is another important point because the American hyperscalers made 95%, just to be safe, of their sales indirectly. They do not sell directly to the customers. Whilst the European do the opposite. They sell only direct. That's why Ionos is huge in Germany, but almost unknown in Italy, or Aruba, same story the other way around, or OVH. Whilst Amazon, Microsoft, and Google are huge because they sell through their network of partners. Dynamo can become the network of trusted partners across Europe because all of them are the same people, are the same providers, are European. The way it works is simple. Every participant must be a vendor. In other words, you have to contribute to the platform offering one or more of your services. And as a consequence, you can resell the services from the others. What Dynamo does is it provides a single master service agreement, single MSA, but every participant is under the same terms, conditions, SLAs for specific services, builds a common catalog, and provides every participant to pick and place in their own specific extension of their marketplace the solutions they want to resell. So it's totally free. In addition to that, we certify the service credentials in order to guarantee they are sovereign European. We qualify the participants to guarantee they operate in Europe. They have their own solutions. They're not resellers of non-European solutions, just to make an example. And we create an equivalent of a big digital cooperative. It's the most ancient economical model in the world. It's a cooperative. Every participant is both a vendor and a reseller, and as a reseller has the relationship with the customer. So Dynamo does not talk to the customer, and not even the vendors of a solution talk to the customer, but the reseller only makes a contract to the customer. All the services resold through Dynamo are packaged in terms of conditions, rules, and therefore can be sold likewise. Many of our European operators nowadays resell, just to make an example, Office 365 packages. So my simple question is, why not starting to sell European?
Francisco, before you go any further in there, when we're looking at the marketplace of services, I mean, things like Office 365 and the reason why Microsoft's done really well with their resale program is because it's a very integrated solution, and it's a SaaS platform, so there's like minimum investment from the reseller. Can you put it into context for our VMware Cloud Service Providers who are sovereign? In this scenario, would we be sort of advocating they sell sovereign infrastructure, for example, or sovereign applications like, I don't know, databases or whatever it might be? What sort of examples would you give so service providers could have a aha moment?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually, because my counter question would be, what do you mean by sovereignty? Because I've been fighting with this question for 3 years, and everybody has got a different interpretation. So I will give you mine. Sovereignty is a political term, and as such, it's very clear. It means the capability to exercise your own laws, your own rules in your own territory. But if you think about technology as something so pervasive and powerful to bypass actually any potential rule, and we know how many rules we have nowadays in Europe about digital, but the problem is enforcement, because technology is hard to be enforced. Then you understand why we need digital sovereignty, because digital sovereignty equals to political sovereignty. But I want to step away because, we are not politicians, and the cloud service providers need, first of all, to survive, second, to thrive. What I mean by sovereignty is the capability to be, let me say, in control of the services you are using. And one of the key characteristics of European cloud service providers is that they do not have a problem in being transparent, controllable, and interoperable. Actually, this can become a competitive advantage. And you can imagine that if the 3 biggest technology players in the market ever decided to make an agreement and become transparent, controllable, and interoperable, game over. So if this has not happened, it's a clear sign of the fact no one of them needs it. But the European cloud service provider can ride this opportunity, this wave, become transparent, controllable, and interoperable. And if there is a sufficient critical mass, and let me say a significantly visible one-stop place where somebody can find them, which is what Dynamo aims to be, then this may become a value for the market. And the demand in the market is clear. We're not just talking to the cloud service providers, we are talking to the customers. And I can tell you the largest companies in Europe, I can give names and I cannot tell you what they told me, but I can talk about people like Volkswagen, BMW, Luxottica, Leonardo, ENI. I mean, these big names tell us something like, well, you know what? We understood the value of data to the point that we decided we want to bring them back to Europe. But if nobody is able to do that, we will build our own data center. I'm not joking. They are threatening us to go back 20 years just because they are fed up about the discussions, the interpretation of sovereignty. So we want to address sovereignty, providing a catalog of services which are transparent, because you can see their characteristics. We use the GIX standard, but we expand it. That's why it's a segue of what I said. So we want to reduce the barriers of compliance, in particular for a small, medium business that cannot afford it. We want the customer to be in control so they can pick and choose the providers they want to use. And we want them to be interoperable. And this comes the point where Dynamo is helping. And I hope the cloud service provider will say, wow, there's different levels of interoperability we provide. First of all, we collect alike subjects. So Dynamo is not open to everyone. So there is a set of requirements to participate that we'll show you after. And everybody is pre-qualified against those requirements. It's like you have to build a consortium, but we help you because all the people you will find inside Dynamo is going to be like you. Second, we provide a common layer of contractual and legal agreement. And this is not trivial. So we spent 6 months developing a common master service agreement. If you look around all the cloud service providers, I've been working for many. In the end of the day, everybody's got their own terms and conditions, their own SLAs. They're pretty much the same. No one adopt the same. So try to put them together and say, why don't you use the same? And maybe everybody can have better conditions, but let's define a common value, a common minimal viable master service agreement. That's a level of interoperability. Then we have a level of interoperability in commercial terms. We have automated the order to cash process, so anyone can resell each other, just click at the button. Then we have automated the compliance. So every service you sell is verified through our trust engine. And again, we are all interoperable because we accept to be verified against the same rules. Then we go down to the technology level. So we do not stop there. So we have created a layer of abstraction or virtualization, if you want, on top of the recipes that anyone want to build. So you want to build a virtual machine, a virtual cloud service, or anyway, a virtual cluster of Kubernetes. You can do whatever you want, but we have a layer of abstraction that connects to multiple technologies that are available nowadays, including VMware, including Open Nebula, just to name some others, OpenStack, Kubernetes, and others. And in this way, you can be interoperable across these multiple platforms. And we do it across multiple suppliers. So it's a multi-supplier integration platform that provides a common, let me say, commercial and legal framework and a common technology framework. Across this common technology framework, we are trying to embed the best of breed technologies. Sometimes they are startups, they are doing exceptionally well, but totally unknown. Sometimes we embed very settled technologies like VMware. But we need to help our participants because it's difficult for them to keep up with this pace of change, embed all the possible technologies, give the customers all the choices. So we try to simplify the life. We try to make this transparency, this openness, become a value. And we do it not just from a theoretical think tank, and not even just on a commercial level. We do it also on a technological level. And I'm a strong believer that these interoperability technologies will become the future because it's impossible to believe that any individual player will build the future network of hyper-distributed cloud-to-edge computing. It's naive. At the same time, it's impossible to accept that our cloud industry will die. So what other solutions we have then find a collaborative way? That's what Dynamo is trying to do.
100% agree with you. And for me, and for our cloud providers, I mean, we've seen an interesting journey with them, Francisco, where they were all about providing infrastructure as a service initially. Many of them still do provide base infrastructure and sell that. But what we've seen more and more of is specialization within verticals, specialization within compliance and skills within technologies, particularly managed services, where the real lucrative revenue is for them. Because when they're just reselling a VM, they got to compete against hyperscale, and unless they have, or the customer has a compelling reason to want to use a national entity rather than an international entity, it's a very difficult sell. So in this scenario, then the service providers could package up their unique value add, the services included, into the offering. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, you touched on a very good point. We could talk for hours, and sometimes, when Enrico, Marco, and myself, we talk to others, we realize, oh, we didn't tell them this, so that's why they asked you the question. So sorry about that. But one important thing to say is that Dynamo is not just about infrastructure as a service. It's not just about infrastructure. It's about any subscription-based cloud service, which means we are collecting the best of breed of, of course, PaaS, SaaS, data APIs, AI, LLMs, you name it.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, the typical cloud service providers don't have this innovative offering at their catalog. So they struggle. They want to sell it, but they don't know where to find it. So we want to be the one-stop place, and we hope we will attract more and more. Now we are going a push way, and we hope that soon we will be in a pull way where people will come to us and say, "I want to join," and this is already happening. But the interesting thing is that it's more difficult at times to convince a pure traditional IaaS cloud service provider to join, because some of them still believe, well, no, I will always make it. I will always retain my customers. No, it's not true, I'm gonna die. And why should I work with a competitor? This is the mindset. Instead of looking at a partner, they still look at a competitor. Whilst if you speak to an AI company, young or not so young, maybe already settled in the market, and I'm talking about, pretty good ones, they are looking ahead. They already realized that for them, the platform is a cage. They don't want to be trapped in that cage, which, by the way, is always an American one. But they didn't have the time, and they could not spend their effort to, let me say, run or engineer their solution on a European platform. But even first, they did not look for the best partner. And they didn't want to find, again, one lock-in with a European company versus an American one. So what they see in Dynamo is fantastic. We can run on many platforms. And this is the service composition that we are enabling through Dynamo. We see this as a value because our European customers, but not just European, prefer to have a solution that runs on a sovereign platform. And we can leverage on this indirect channel of sales that we will never have access to. So the paradox is that those innovative companies, which everybody would like to have in their catalog, are trying to be part of something like this, but they couldn't find it.
Yeah, understood, 100%. And I think, as we look more to the data economy, becoming above that IaaS level and becoming data and APIs, it's going to become super important that our cloud providers mature on that journey as well. And then we're going to be able to do everything. So they're going to need support from a community of providers who are also able to provide innovative services. I think you've convinced me on the actual kind of solution itself. And what I'm curious about now is, Marco, perhaps we could go to you and just, can you tell me what type of things a cloud provider is going to need to do to prepare for working with Dynamo in terms of, connectors, APIs, accounting, metering, service delivery? I mean, I know there's lots going to be specified in the MSA in terms of service quality and stuff like that, but practically speaking, how do they approach this?
Now we are trying to help them for certain services where there are, I would say, mainstream, such as the virtual machines or the Kubernetes, managed services in Kubernetes, where we create some, I would say, generally speaking, languages for putting all the things together and making them work together. That's the main idea that lays behind the Dynamo technical way of approaching this problem. But in the future, for sure, we are creating some templates that allows the service provider to provide us, I would say, a way to translate their way of speaking or their APIs in a way that we can comprehend, and so we can use in order to act, not only to understand how it works, but also to provide the services by our platform. In that ways, we are able to put together things that now are not speaking together. Besides this, we are, I would say, going forward in one step that maybe Francesco will go deeper into, which is a movement that is trying to get not only from the outside one compatibility among the service providers, but also by addressing one sort of common way of behaving, and so common API way of behaving, which could be, I would say, that the next step, because now we are, I would say, masking it with our technology, and in the future we can adopt the future evolution and hopefully future evolution that the cloud service providers will set in place once they understand that together can be more than the sum of the single cloud service provider. So at the moment, there are a number of tools that are in place in order to get the cloud service provider able to provide it, to publish its own services inside Dynamo Marketplace. That's the main, I would say.
Right. So it's at the moment our cloud service providers, you know, whether they got Cloud Direct or you know, as a part of VCF or VCF with VCF automation, they're using a lot of APIs to deliver services already and highly automate their services. And obviously then they've got integration with their business support systems and order management systems and things like that. So this is gonna stage one do a conversion, like an API gateway adapter type.
Yeah, consider that we are putting ourselves just a little bit up in upper part, because we don't want to substitute a Cloud Director or something like that, because they do a job that we are not going to do. But we are going to put ourselves on top of them in order to make all the things work together, or to create or to prepare the background, the playground, in order to make the things work together. That's our position. We are not going to we are a partner. We are not going to be a cloud service provider. We are going to federate cloud service provider to provide their service, and you, or people like you, that has its own technologies, must continue working on your technology, and you have your role, which is different from ours. But we are trying to put the things together.
I think I have the most diplomatic CTO in the world, because he's trying to work around things, not to tell you. We'll tell you straight away. Nowadays, we have developed connectors to the multiple technologies and to the multiple providers, which is a pain, yes, but we want to make life easy for our new joiners. What Marco was trying not to say is that some of our participants and companies, let me say, we created a movement around the European cloud service providers, which once in a lifetime said, okay, this is a good time. Maybe Dynamo is giving us an opportunity to speak about common challenges and common solutions. And some of them decided to start working on a definition of common framework of APIs. This has not been announced yet, and I hope it will be announced soon. But as you can imagine, we are talking about big companies, and it takes long time. But I prefer big things taking long time. and at that time, all the work we've done will be wasted, yes, but we will be happy because we will have one common set of API. Another thing that Marco was not trying to say is that we know VMware is still 90% of the virtualization market, so we will be silly to neglect it as a fact or think about the future of the world being just Kubernetes. Maybe Kubernetes will become the VMware in 15 years or 10 years, I hope less. But the reality is that nowadays we need to keep up with all the different technology stacks. We also worked very closely with your experts to understand whether we can really create a liquid infrastructure layer across multiple VMware stacks running on multiple suppliers. And we know that for now, this is not yet possible without giving access to all the infrastructure of one supplier as one another, which is pretty impossible to do in the market. But we are very happy that VMware told us this is in the roadmap and it will come. When this will come, I hope we will have the same level of flexibility across VMware regions in multiple suppliers. Likewise, we can have nowadays with many technologies like Rancher or Liquor and other technologies across Kubernetes clusters, but we stay on top of it. We are not reaching against anyone. Actually, we are looking at the market. If the market buys VMware or runs on VMware, we will be ready for getting VMware. At the same time, if there is no one-stop place where multiple suppliers start to talk together, there will be no incentive to develop common APIs or to push on guys like you, Broadcom now, say, hey, why don't you try doing something better on your side? Because there is a lot of your providers that are wishing to do that. And by the way, Dynamo is promoting this. So we welcome the evolution of VMware in this sense.
Well, I think nowadays, I mean, Martin, you know more about the detail than I, but there's a fair API stack available which our partners use, all the time.
And absolutely, and we've been building for some time this 3-tier model into Cloud Director. So we would have that reseller model. So this is what Dynamo is referring to, really, is taking advantage of that 3-tier model. And engineering has committed to move that into the full VCF stack over the next couple of iterations of VCF as well. So that 3-tier model, where you have a reseller model within the multi-tenanted architecture, will continue from us.
That's a really awesome point, because loads of cloud providers have been asking for this 3-tier tenancy model with Cloud Director, which will become eventually VCF automation. This fits this perfectly.
Absolutely, yeah. And sorry, Francesco, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that when I was in my previous role in GaiaX, I had the honor to be guest of VMware in many road shows, and that was because I didn't get any money, but I was totally supporting the strategy of VMware, being the only pure technology provider, let me say, enabling interoperability. The only problem I was sensing at the time, and still now, is that, yes, you need interoperability technologies, but you also have to have a commercial interoperability, which is a different type of problem that we are solving, and a win-win business model. Otherwise, nobody will join. So I think that if VMware solves the technical problem and we have a commercial operative aggregation, bingo. And and the future is open to any change. But now, I believe this is what we should target together in VMware.
100%, Francisco. And I guess really it kind of comes down to the last key point, which is going to be on all cloud providers' minds, and that's costs. And Enrico, as the Chief Revenue Officer, can you enlighten us on how much this is going to cost a cloud provider?
So the participation to Dynamo is based on the Dynamo business model is based on two fees. The first one is a subscription fee. So there's an amount that the company have to pay in order to participate to the ecosystem on an annual basis, and this depending on the total revenues of the company. For the first year, for 2025, we have decided to set it to 0, as we want to have a fast growth of our critical mass, and we want to build a catalog as complete as possible of solutions. So this is the first one. Then we have a transaction fee. So for the value that is generated through the platform, the companies will have to pay a transaction fees that varies from 12% for small amount under 100K to 8% for higher amounts, for above 500K, and in the middle, 10% in the middle. So that will be the amount that will be retained, that will have to be paid by the companies generating business through the platform. The transaction fee will be partially retained by Dynamo. 70% of that 12 to 8% will be retained by Dynamo to pay our salaries, and the remaining 30% will be given to the reseller, which of course will keep it as a fee to sustain the reselling cost. What we didn't mention is that there is a rule that we want to keep, is that the vendor that is publishing services in the platform will publish the service to a price which is not higher than their public price list, so that we keep the competition fair. At the same time, the reseller that is reselling services from the Dynamo platform will be allowed to make his own pricing depending on the commercial situation. So he can add a markup. What we envision is that probably some of the cloud service provider will use services of other cloud service provider as building blocks or more complex and composite solutions. So they will not make a simple reselling, but they will build services upon that, and so they can make a different pricing. This is it. The big thing about this is that the value of Dynamo is the value that is generated for the cloud service provider. And each cloud service provider pays only if the value is there. So if there is no value, of course, there is nothing. We are pretty confident that we can start by that, and that once that they will start, the cloud service provider will start to understand that this portfolio enlargement and this widened geographical coverage will allow them to reply to tenders that today they are not able to answer to. They will be able to cover needs that currently they are not able to cover, etc. The volume will grow pretty fast.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Martin.
No, I was just going to say, do you think there is capacity here for having a more, what AWS calls a spot instance, where you have available capacity in certain providers, and that available capacity could be sold at reduced rates for short periods of time, and maybe for worker nodes for Kubernetes or some other types of use cases? I think, you know, there seems to be a lot of driving towards that, of using just unused capacity in the space.
Yeah, that could be an option, Martin. What we see is that sometimes this could be, I mean, the biggest problem, let's be clear, the biggest problem for cloud service provider today is not missing capacity, but is missing customers. So this is the big plus of this platform. So we've been talking, for instance, we are talking also to system integrators. So system integrators cannot be part of the Dynamo ecosystem, as Francesco was mentioning, only if you are a cloud service provider publishing service, then you are able to resell. So we do not allow pure resellers into the ecosystem. But they are in touch with the current needs of the customer, of the end users, and they said, you know what? There are tenders where public tenders, for instance, ESA tenders, where in the requirements there is sovereign digital cloud, but then I don't know how to cover this requirement when talking directly, I don't know, to the Italian cloud service provider, because then I will need to talk also to my French colleague to understand whether there is another cloud service provider there. And what we allow now is, okay, you talk to the Italian cloud service provider, and the Italian cloud service provider now can activate the services for Germany, for France, or for whatever other geographical area that is not covered for today. So now they can answer to a tender that yesterday they couldn't afford to manage. Or there is some technical requirements or technical capabilities they do not cover, but in the Dynamo portfolio, they will find a solution that they will be able to put that solution in a more composite, integrated capability to offer. So we believe that the big part of the value is coming out of that. Then, of course, yes, using capacity and having a more optimized user capacity is another option. Of course, there will be possibly the need of having a more in-depth integration, as what Francesco was describing before, for federating VMware capabilities across different providers.
For me, this seems like, I mean, I'm really glad we had this discussion, because I've peeled back for many years now the problems that we're having in the EU with our cloud infrastructure and strategy that we have in the EU. This seems like a really great idea that has a chance of producing something that's going to work and be in the interests of our cloud providers to get involved with. The opportunity could be massive. So As a next step then for our cloud providers, we've discussed what Domino is, how you guys operate, what type of services you'd be looking at as examples, the cost model, the adapters and kind of API work maybe that needs to be done. I think the last thing that remains is, how does a cloud provider get in contact with you guys and find out more?
Easy. There is a website. There is a get in touch with us. There is, email. We will follow up. There is mobile phone. There is. I will tell you the truth. My dear colleague Enrico, I think he has one of the most difficult jobs, which is not as complicated as Marco's job as the CTO, but he has to reach out to this ecosystem of European providers. You have no ideas. Our funnel is made of hundreds of names of companies. We have no clue. And we capture them. Sometimes we're using also artificial intelligence. So our hope is to create this snowball effect. The snowball effect will make Dynamo work. The snowball effect will make the catalog grow. The snowball effect will make the participants make money through Dynamo. And now we need a snowball effect to let everybody know that Dynamo exists. Reach out to us. We will take care of you. We have a very simple 5 steps onboarding playbook. We will guide you through what Dynamo is. We will show you the master service agreement. We will describe together with you the service descriptions you want to publish, and we will onboard you. That's it. We are doing it already with 10 companies now. We want to grow to 50 next year. And of course, it's quite a job. But if you come to us, you help us, because we cannot reach out to all of you with all the, the willingness and the forces we have. It's really huge. But I think somebody has to try to do it. And that's this is our mission. We want to make something big and great for Europe.
Please reach out. Enrico, Marco, Francesco, and Martin, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate your input, and wish you every success with Dynamo, and hopefully our cloud providers will reach out to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Martin.